Great, good evening. The meeting of February 11th, 2019 is hereby called to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Francis.
Here.
Trustee Model.
Here.
Trustee Paveza.
Here.
Trustee Mutal. Trustee Snyder.
Here.
Trustee Schiappa.
Here.
Great. If any residents want to speak on a topic that is on the agenda, you're encouraged to speak when that topic is on the agenda under consideration by the board. However, we now have a chance for residents to make any comments on any subjects that aren't on the agenda. I know some of you are probably here to speak about Sterigenics. We do have an update on that, and that's first on the agenda after the consent agenda. So I think we have some news to share with you. I would encourage you to speak at that time, but you're welcome to speak anytime you're comfortable. Any residents that would like to speak right now?
Is this any better? Yeah. So amongst those sources, one was the special service tax area. And you may know that there are 12 communities in Burr Ridge that pay the entire cost of their roadway costs. It was part of their annexation agreement or their development agreement. And my suggestion as president of the Lake Ridge Club Homeowners Association, that the village considers funding the repair and replacements of roads in subdivisions by using a special service area. That way, fairness and cost can be restored and the cost assigned to those that gain the most benefit, and not additionally punish the residents of the approximately 12 communities that must pay for their own roads. Next topic is what we have in front of us today, which is 3 acting village presidents. And Mr. Model, I observed you and the other trustees since ethylene oxide became a staple in my vocabulary. And in that time, I've noticed what I perceive as more boredom than interest from you and feigned interest from others. That is until you discovered ethylene oxide might be a useful campaign vehicle. And I liken your newfound interest to that of ex-Mayor Straub, who reluctantly engaged on the issue. And when a report surfaced about potential sample contamination, Mickey immediately emailed me and declared the Sterigenics concern was bogus and a witch hunt. I would note that the sample contamination matter now looks mostly bogus. I have no details of what took place in your private meeting, but the outcome strongly argues you engineered a stalemate in supporting Al Paveza as interim village president and forced the issue, resulting in 3 acting village presidents, each serving for 3 meetings. I have a pretty good idea how the other trustees all aligned, and those that did not support a leader, they share in the damage that was on display at a recent shouting match here in this very room. This lack of continuous leadership cripples the village. And it does so that the acting president cannot develop the relationships necessary with the other politicians and leaders in the area. And so we've handicapped the village when we can least afford to be handicapped. This need to be made abundantly clear. by the village's ETO sample results that when modeled for long-term continuous exposure, find the cancer risk ranging from 4 times to 12 times higher than the EPA action levels of 100 traditional cancers in a million. I wish we could find a solution to this problem, but I'm afraid we're halfway down the stream and there's no way back. But we've been painfully put to the sidelines because of this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there any other residents with any comments? Okay, seeing none. Oh, is there another one? Okay, yeah, please, if you'll approach. Just say your name and the town you live in when you're at the microphone, please. Address.
Hello, my name is Teresa Fornick. I'm in Burridge. I live at 8720 South Grant Street here in Burridge. So I've never come to a board meeting before, but I feel compelled to not only be here today, but to stand up and speak before this group, especially since you, Trustee Model, are acting as a rotating mayor at this time. Trustee Model, you should know that I've lived in Burridge for 8 years. But prior to living here, I grew up in Darien, so I have been within 1 mile of Sterigenics for over 26 years. And like all our residents, I have been exposed to their toxic emissions just by simply being here. I also attended local schools, including Our Lady of Peace and Hinsdale South High School. You should know that I nearly lost my life to acute lymphocytic leukemia, a cancer that has been cited as one of the primary cancers ethylene oxide causes. I had to endure constant chemotherapy infusions, cranial radiation, and chemotherapy injected into my spine for 2 years and 4 months of my life. You should know I also suffered a miscarriage in 2017, another consequence related to chronic exposure of ethylene oxide. The fact that ethylene oxide causes cellular mutations resulting in cancer is a fact. If an individual chooses to ignore that data, it does not make that fact any less true. If you or your loved ones have not been affected by this substance, be grateful, but be mindful of the reality that no one can be sure whether his or her own body will be able to continue to successfully combat the effects of this substance. When news broke in August of 2018 regarding the ETO in our air, my heart dropped. I constantly worry for my 2 living children who have been exposed to this substance since their birth. And I worry for myself, my husband, and frankly, every single resident within this beautiful yet now contaminated village. Trustee Model, I want to go over some other information I believe you well know. So in August of 2018, you were totally absent in supporting the residents of Burridge during this public health crisis. And it is a crisis. You have gone on record multiple times, in fact, stating that Sterigenics does not present a threat to our residents. Although it appears you have had a recent epiphany that the residents of Burridge are, in fact, in harm's way, you are very late to the game. You have never issued an apology. You have never issued an explanation for your flip in your stance. Your motives, frankly, appear disingenuous and too conveniently timed with the upcoming mayoral election. Your residents are not here to play political games in a boardroom. We are not here to continue to be an experimental sample group for a corporation with deep pockets and greed at its heart. Deciding to be against Sterigenics is not a political tactic to employ. The purpose of this venue is for board members to function in unison to protect the residents. End of story. You don't seem to be the proper person to act as interim mayor if you do not wholeheartedly embody that description. And therefore, I would ask that you consider stepping down immediately. Thank you.
Any other residents' comments at this time? Great. I'll have a chance to address some of that on the Sterigenics topic. All right, next on the agenda is the consent agenda and omnibus vote. All items listed on the agenda with an asterisk are considered routine by the village board, and they'll be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda. Simply say remove. First on the consent agenda, under minutes, A, approval of the regular board meeting of January 28th, 2019. Under ordinances, 6A, adoption of ordinance approving a special use for an illegal structure, Z25, 2018, 16 West 020 79th Street, Dobieski. 6B, adoption of ordinance approving a special use for an automobile sales use, Z01, 2019, 60 Shore Drive, Nadaf. Under considerations, we move down to E, approval of recommendation to order 2 police squad cars included in fiscal year 19 and 20 budget for delivery after May 1st, 2019. Under F, approval of request for blanket raffle license for 2019 for the Willowbrook Burridge Chamber of Commerce and hosting facility licenses as needed for various locations in conjunction with the Chamber's fundraising events throughout the year. Under G, approval of request from the Willowbrook Burridge Chamber of Commerce for placement of temporary promotional signs for the Business Expo on June 5th, 2019, the Cruisin' 66 Fest on August 10th, 2019, and the golf outing in September 2019. Under H, approval of request for raffle license for Our Lady of Peace School and hosting facility license for Marriott Hotel Burr Ridge for its fundraising event on April 3rd, 2019. Under I, approval of request for raffle license for Pleasantdale School PTO 107 and hosting facility license for Burr Ridge Park District for its fundraising event on March 2nd, 2019. Under J, approval of vendor list dated February 11, 2019 in the amount of $232,471.63 for all funds, plus $200,212.41 for payroll, for a grand total of $432,684.04, which includes special expenditures of $29,991.23 for 5 deliveries of bulk rock salt and $139,955 for the purchase of a cat excavator. Is there a motion?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Now we're under considerations. Update regarding Sterigenics, and let us start off, please, with an update from the village administrator, Doug, and I know we've got some news to share tonight.
Yes. So we posted an update on our website last week, and I will reiterate much of what's in there and plus add to that. The latest news was last week on February 5th, the U.S. EPA posted an update regarding test results in November and December of 2018. The update included data from the beginning of testing in mid-November through the end of December. These results showed increasingly elevated levels of ethylene oxide in the immediate vicinity of Sterigenics in Willowbrook Village Hall. In response to these latest test results and other information that came before the village, Willowbrook and Darien have requested that the Illinois Attorney General and the DuPage State's Attorney seek an emergency court order to immediately shut down Sterigenics until there is definitive proof that ethylene oxide presents no health hazards to the surrounding communities. After my discussion with various trustees, the Village of Burr Ridge has determined to join that request, and tonight the village board is signing a letter, individually signing a letter that will be mailed tomorrow to the Illinois Attorney General and to the DuPage State's Attorney, again asking that they immediately seek a court order to shut down Sterigenics until it can be proven that it's not a public safety, public health hazard. There was also last week, as we reported in the on our website update, a report from CBS Local News, which mentioned the operation by Sterigenics or their predecessor companies at 2 locations in Burr Ridge. And the village staff in Burr Ridge has spent a lot of time researching that information. We continue to research it. But here's what we know right now, that from 1998 to 2001, Griffith Laboratories operated at 16W151 Shore Court. The description of the business as provided by Griffith indicates that they did quality assurance testing for medical, food, and cosmetic industries. There was no building permits or other activity that would indicate sterilization or the type of work that was done in Willowbrook. And again, that zoning certificate that was issued for that business became inactive in 2001, and we have no records of any operations in Burr Ridge since that time. We also discovered that based on utility bill information that for a brief time in 1995, Griffith Labs operated at 261 Shore Drive. Our records from 1995 aren't as complete as they are in later years, but we do not have a specific record of what they did for that brief time in 1995 at 261 Shore Drive. They operated there. Again, the first billing indicated they opened there in 1995 and also closed in 1995 at the 261 Shore Drive address, not to be confused with the 16W151 Shore Court address I was speaking of before. The CBS report also showed a building at 405 Heathrow Court. They did not specifically call out that address, but they showed that building, and we, of course, recognized it. We have no documentation that Sterigenics or Griffith Lab or affiliated company operated there at any time, but we continue to research the records to see if we can find anything that would indicate otherwise. We reviewed all of our building permit records. We found no building permits at any time for Sterigenics or Griffith Labs or anything close to that that would indicate any additional activity in the village of Burr Ridge. We have also filed a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request, with the Illinois EPA and with the Tri-State Fire District, seeking information about any activities of that company or related companies in Burr Ridge at any time. We did get a response prompt response from the Tri-State Fire District. Village staff is going through that information, and if we find anything, we'll certainly report that as soon as it's known to us. And just to reiterate some of the information that's been provided more recently at board meetings, at its meeting of January 28th, 2019, the village board directed the village attorney to file a petition seeking to join the lawsuit filed by the state of Illinois Attorney General and the DuPage State's attorney. Village Attorney Scott Euler's here, and he can provide any additional information if requested. Also at that January 28th board meeting, the village board appointed 7 members to our Environmental Quality Commission and tasked that commission with providing oversight and advice regarding issues pertaining to Sterigenics. The first meeting of the Environmental Quality Commission will be tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. here at the Village Hall. It's a public meeting. Public is invited to attend that meeting. The members of the committee include the chairman of the committee, Trustee Guy Francis, and Trustee Tony Scalp is a member of the committee, plus 5 residents, including Jennifer Hawk, Jennifer McConaughey, Tom Layden, Stephen McCracken, and Yvonne Meyer. Again, that first meeting of the Environmental Quality Commission is at 7 p.m. here at the Village Hall on Tuesday, February 12th, tomorrow evening. That's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions, and Attorney Euler can also answer any questions you may have about any legal actions that are ongoing.
Thank you, Doug, for the update. Is there any update on the legal side of things at all right now, Scott?
Well, I can indicate we have prepared the motion to intervene, the draft motion to intervene for the village of Burr Ridge to file. The issue we have right now is the matter has been removed, as you know, from state court, where it was filed by the Illinois Attorney General's office, to federal court. So the issue that is being briefed in federal court right now and will need to be resolved in the immediate future is whether or not this matter stays in federal court. So there isn't actually a state action for us to intervene in right now. The matter is in federal court. So until that is resolved, there wouldn't be much purpose in filing until we know where this action is going to be prosecuted.
And what about the request for the injunction due to the public health crisis?
Well, that request has been made repeatedly by the Village of Burr Ridge, by Darien, by Willowbrook, and other adjoining communities to the Illinois Attorney General's office. I think where the Illinois Attorney General is right now is they're trying to move this back to state court in order to have the state court make substantive decisions about things like a temporary restraining order. This may seem technical, but you can't seek relief in the federal court if you're seeking to have the action sent back to state court. Once you have substantive decisions made by the federal court, you're going to remain in federal court. So one thing has to precede the other at this point.
Thank you. It's a frustrating process, and we're going to open it up to the board here. I just want to, address a little bit. I take this job seriously. This is, I think all of us do. This is a deliberative job, and I heard some of the comments made earlier. I don't know where it's on the record that I ever said I supported Sterigenics or anything like that. If you perceive me to be a little slow, I wanted to collect information and understand the situation. I think it's important to understand, and I did the best I could. And since, learning as much as I could from all of you and from Evan, you've presented a lot of information to the board. I think all of us, we've been learning a lot here and trying to do the right thing. I personally, I made the motion to join the federal lawsuit before the board. I supported the formation of this environmental committee. I had volunteered for it. I wasn't chosen, which is fine. You've got some great people. I urged the chairman to meet as soon as possible and to meet frequently and to get a report to the board in 30 days. I've been urging that. And as soon as I had the chance, I signed on to this emergency injunction. So, I think I have been doing the best I can, and I'm frustrated too by what limited actions we have in the village board. I can't imagine what the people with health issues are going through. I can only imagine, and I'm sorry for your pain, and I hope that we can all get this resolved as quickly as possible. I am in favor of them shutting down personally. So anyway, are there other village board members that want to make some comments here? Yes, Trustee Francis.
A couple questions to Doug on your update, please. So you had mentioned the two addresses where Griffith Laboratories, the predecessors to Sterigenics, had operated, and those are warehouses, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
They're light industrial warehouse, office
So
warehouse.
they may not have been sterilizing equipment there, but they may have taken pallets of sterilized equipment to off-gas into those facilities, and then the ethylene oxide off-gassing from the materials that they sterilized would then be vented directly or emitted directly to the atmosphere in the neighborhoods surrounding there. So that's a concern, even though they weren't operating a sterilization facility there. Also, in your FOIA request to the Tri-State Fire Department, I had suggested you garner the inspection reports for those buildings. Are those part of the FOIA request?
Let Evan's doing that research.
Because my understanding is that the fire department makes an annual inspection of these facilities, and in their reports it might describe what kind of activities are going on there.
So two parts to your question. The first is that the original, we'll just call it trove of data that we received from Tri-State is over 1,000 documents large. Basically, Tri-State and what they've done, they've received so many FOIA requests, they simply provided all of the above response to anybody who asked for it. And so they gave me the all of the above CD, which had over 1,000 files on it. These documents go back at least to 1984, to the beginning of when they started their operations in Willowbrook, so we're continuing to go through that. The other item that complicates things is that Tri-State does not have all of their records digitized at this point. They are literally sitting in a paper format in a warehouse at one of their locations, and so they believe they are not actually complete with their entire investigation into this matter. So more to your question, to provide an answer, we have not received anything regarding an inspection report for those specific locations yet, anything on Shore Drive Court or Heathrow Court at this time.
Okay.
However, I have asked that while they have provided me everything they have, I ask that they continue to have ongoing investigation into their own files so that we may have a better understanding as to what inspections took place at those specific addresses.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you for the update.
Any other questions or comments from the board at all? Yes, Trustee Paveza.
One comment that I have, I was very upset when I saw a press release where Trustee Model, 2 or 3 days after assuming the presidency, is authorizing village staff to get involved with an injunction to close down Sterigenics without any comment from the board. I asked the village attorney if the way he read it, did he feel it was also a problem because you would exert your temporary authority, and he agreed with me. And I think, you know, we're all interested, but at the same time, I don't think it should be such to where you are creating an injunction to shut down Sterigenics. We're all working on it. And the way that press release, whether it was your comment or not, it didn't sound good. And like I said, I asked the attorney, and he felt that the way it was worded was an overstatement.
Thank you. Anything else?
No.
Was there, could we hear from you, what was your ruling on that? Because
Well, I don't have a ruling on it, but there are.
damned if you do
I
or
did-
damned if you don't.
I did receive a copy of it and took a look at it. It was difficult to tell from my reading of it what exactly you had a conversation about and what was being authorized. I'm aware that our office was authorized to prepare a petition to intervene, which we've done, and that at the time we were contemplating, I talked to Doug about pushing the Attorney General, as the City of Darien has and Willowbrook has, to move forward with a TRO. I'm not sure we had concluded what we were going to do. So we do want to be careful when we issue press releases that they're consistent with our policy, and I think we have a policy on the issuance by the mayor, our acting mayor, of press releases. I don't have that in front of me, but there is a set of guidelines for issuing press releases.
From the mayor's office.
Issuing from the mayor's office, right, and then there are some guidelines for what can be in those press releases. So generally, the board can speak on matters that, the board has to speak on matters that are being authorized for the board to take action on. Otherwise, if we're sharing information, that can be appropriate through a press release.
So I didn't issue a press release through the village board at all in my capacity. The village put the information on the website. I was contacted by the village staff and told that this was happening and should we sign on. Having had all the discussions and heard from all of you, I took action as soon as I possibly could. So, you know, I did what we were supposed to do and what the village staff had the authority to do, what I had the authority to do. I issued a press release personally, but that was simply a mirror of what was on the village's website. So, you know, that's what that was. And I was asked not to grandstand here, so I was not going to speak about what I do personally on the stage here. Yes, Trustee Scalpa.
So, with the injunction, it's essentially another lawsuit, correct?
Yes, it's a part of the lawsuit, but it's a particular action that
It's a
you'd seek.
separate lawsuit, correct?
It is a motion, the complaint that's already on file can result in a request for immediate relief by the Attorney General's office. So it is a sort of a separate piece of the existing litigation.
Okay, and that's
But you have
something
to ask
that
for
we
it
need to be-
specifically.
That's something that we need to discuss in closed session, is any probable litigation.
If there's action being authorized by the board, yes, it requires board action.
Okay.
It requires a board vote.
Now, this injunction, if we move forward with it, I don't know what's happening, I wasn't informed. What does it do to the current lawsuit that we are trying to join? Does it hinder our possibility of joining that? I mean, if the state's attorney and the attorney general are moving to sue Sterigenics, and then we try to go around, I mean, what's their incentive to let us join their lawsuit?
Right, so this board has not authorized separate litigation yet by the board, by the
There's a
village of
press
Blue
release
Ridge.
stating that.
Right, so this
Okay.
board hasn't entertained that issue. The only complaint that's currently active is that filed by the Illinois Attorney General, and they would have to bring their own TRO action if they chose to.
Okay.
So,
So there's a press release stating that,
Well, no,
and
this
which is, consistent with the politicizing of the position that you're carrying right now, Zach.
I
And
don't see where you're going with this. I want to hear from Doug about what happened, because Doug's the one that called me and said that Willowbrook and Burr Ridge, Willowbrook and Darien were filing this injunction, and that we should do that. Why don't you let us know what happened here?
So I was contacted middle of last week by Willowbrook, telling me what they were doing in terms of sending a letter to the Attorney General and the state's attorney, asking them to take it, to request an emergency, I don't know what the right terminology is, but to reiterate our prior request that they issue an emergency or immediate shutdown.
Why did they do this? Because there was new
Because
information?
of the new test results that came out on
was it a
Tuesday.
letter or was it an injunction?
There were just a letter. It was just
Okay.
a letter. So on Tuesday, we got test results from the US EPA. Those test results were
Right,
not good.
I'm well aware of
Very
this.
bad. Tuesday, Willowbrook calls me and says, we're going to send them a letter urging them to seek an immediate stop.
Okay.
Do you want to do the same thing? I said, well,
Yes.
I'm sure we do,
Is
but
that what I signed?
that's what you signed. So,
Okay.
so I talked to Acting President Model, I think on Wednesday maybe, or Tuesday, I don't remember. Called, in the meantime, I've talked to several other trustees. Today, I got the draft letter that you saw tonight, emailed it to the village board saying, is this good?
Okay.
I assumed, I knew it would be because you basically already had said this.
Yes.
You
And
know,
I agree with the letter.
and, yeah. And so tonight, I have been passing around that letter to get everyone's signature,
Okay.
get everyone's, but trustee Matal, make sure you don't leave without me catching you. And then that will be mailed tomorrow. And that's just
Okay.
a letter again to the Attorney General and the DuPage State's Attorney, asking them to seek an immediate shutdown based on those test results from last Tuesday.
Thank
So-
you. So I don't see.
Letter is different than an injunction that you had
Well,
put in the press release.
the press release was verbatim cut and paste from the village's information that was on the village website.
It was titled injunction. Title of the
What
letter.
is did you read the letter you signed? Let's read the letter. Let's read the letter. What does the letter say, Doug?
It's addressed to Kwame Raoul, Office of the Illinois Attorney General, Robert Berlin, DuPage County State's Attorney, and Kimberly Fox, Cook County State's Attorney. On behalf of the residents of the Village of Burr Ridge, we, the elected members of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Burr Ridge, are seeking immediate emergency action by your offices to cause the shutdown of the Sterigenics facility now operating in the Village of Willowbrook until such time as the discharge of ethylene oxide from this facility can be reduced to demonstrable safe levels for adjoining residents and community members. As your offices are aware, ethylene oxide is now designated a known carcinogen, and its improper discharge or emission into the atmosphere constitutes a threat to public health and safety. The most recent testing results from the air sampling completed by the United States Environmental Protection Agency substantiate increased concentrations of ETO in the atmosphere in and about the areas adjacent to the Sterigenics facility. There are properties within the Village of Burr Ridge less than half a mile from this facility. The most recent data and continuing testing results of the impact of the operation of the Sterigenics plant in Willowbrook demonstrate that there is cause for further and more careful analysis of the operation of and discharge from this Sterigenics facility. For the present, the continued emissions of elevated levels of cancer-causing ethylene oxide cannot simply be ignored and create unacceptable risk of danger to public health and permanent and potentially fatal health consequences. Data from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's 2004-2014 National Air Toxins Assessment Map shows that residents are exposed to elevated levels of ethylene oxide in our Village of Burr Ridge. Along with the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, your offices are charged with the enforcement of the federal and state environmental laws and standards to ensure that pollutants or discharges from Illinois businesses do not endanger the health and welfare of our residents and workers. Your offices must make the immediate protection of the health and safety of the residents of the Village of Burr Ridge and surrounding communities an urgent priority. The safety of the air and environment in our community must be assured. This board therefore requests an immediate emergency action and intervention of your offices on behalf of the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency to shut down or initiate those actions necessary to cause the shutdown of all operations of Sterigenics, resulting in any discharge or emissions of ethylene oxide until it is definitively established through reliable testing results that no residents or workers are at any risk due to exposure to ethylene oxide discharges or emissions from the Sterigenics facility in Willowbrook. Our board is prepared to request the right to intervene in the current litigation initiated by your offices and to support and collaborate with your office and the involved agencies to best promote and ensure the safety of the area, air quality, atmosphere, and environment to protect area residents and workers from the adverse health impacts of any discharges or emissions of ethylene oxide from the Sterigenics facility in Willowbrook. Approved by this Board of Trustees, it's the 11th day of February 2019, and then to be signed by the 6 trustees.
Thank you. And when you called me with that, you indicated that as acting mayor, it was my responsibility to approve that quickly. Is that correct?
All of the trustees, right?
Correct, but
Yeah.
you
Right.
told me can I get started with this? And I did give you the approval. And another word for an immediate, when you're asking the Attorney General for an immediate relief, what is the word again? Immediate emergency action, what's another word for that? An injunction to shut them down, am I correct?
TRO.
TRO. So I'm
Well, that's
troubled
the
by where
key.
the concern is coming from.
That's the difference.
I think that we acted
Is this an
appropriately.
injunction, this letter?
It's a request, it's a request for the
It's
Attorney
not
General
an
to take it.
injunction.
Well,
What you have publicized is that you have authorized an injunction on our behalf without.
I didn't author, you should read the press release, and I'm not going to go into it right here because it's not appropriate for this stage. I think we've talked about it, and I think, again, we're taking action. Our residents are here asking us to take action. I think we all agree on that. Let's not bicker over the less important things. So, is there another comment or question about the Sterigenics? Yes, Trustee Francis.
Thank you. First and foremost, I want to comment about the press release. The letterhead says, Village President Zach Model. You are not the village president.
That's from my campaign team.
I don't care who it's from.
That's my logo.
It says Village President Zach Model, and this appeared in my inbox. Yesterday, I'm going to quote here, yesterday I authorized village staff and the attorney to work with Village of Willowbrook and City of Darien. We are seeking an emergency injunction to shut down Sterigenics. You acted beyond your authority. The board directs staff, and the board directs the village attorney, not the acting village president. You acted beyond your authority to get yourself on TV at your friend Dan Lipinski's press conference.
Sorry you feel that.
Let's talk about Sterigenics for a minute. Up until February 8th, 2018, you disagreed with me on Sterigenics and ethylene oxide emissions. In December, you told me ethylene oxide in Willowbrook came from car exhaust. Last meeting, January 28th, you told me that the reason for the elevated cancer rates in Willowbrook was because the women in Willowbrook drink too much.
Excuse me.
Now, conveniently, you want to shut Sterigenics down. The recently released EPA air sampling test data, which you claimed alarmed you, confirms the previous air sampling test data taken by Burr Ridge, which confirms the previously taken test data taken by Willowbrook, which confirms the previous test data, and so on and so on and so on. No change there. I did not see you at the public forum held at Ashton Place last November. I did not see you at the Sterigenics corporate office protest in Oak Brook last December. I did not see you at the Sterigenics fundraiser in Willowbrook last January. Now, here you come, and you want Sterigenics shut down so you can be on TV. You are politicizing the Sterigenics issue. Shame on you. You are climbing on the backs of those individuals suffering with cancer that was caused by Sterigenics for your own political gain. Shame on you. You promised all 5 of us trustees that if you politicized the position of acting village president, that you would step down as acting village president. You have done that already. Now it is time for you to step down. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I take issue with several of them, but we'll leave it there. Are there any comments from the public on this?
Well, I'd like to make the comment that what trustee Francis said is true. That was one of the things we talked about when we were in the meeting, that we were reluctant to have you as acting president because you were running for mayor and it would involve politicization of your time as
That's not a
trustee.
Sterigenics topic. Thank
Well,
you.
in one way it is, because you're politicizing the Sterigenics situation, and you promised that you wouldn't.
I'm trying to do the best I can for the residents. I was
Well, you're
following
not
the
doing it
instructions
that
from the
way.
village staff.
I have to agree with trustee Francis.
Thank you.
You aren't living up to what you promised.
So, and I agree that you're politicizing the position, and you said that if you politicize this position that you'd step down. So I'm asking you to step down.
Thank you
Okay.
for your comment.
And I'm gonna make a motion for you to step down and have Guy Franzese take over from this point on.
I don't think there's any room for that motion at this time. I'm looking for public comments on Sterigenics. Please approach the microphone. If you can please state your name and the address, your home town. You don't need to state your full address.
Hi, Catherine Camarena. Not full address? 55 Deer Path Trail, Burridge. We know that the press release came from trustee Model, and I wasn't planning on speaking, but I felt compelled to. We know that the press release did come from Zachary Model, and I know too often these discussions can turn negative, and I just wanted to say that even though it did come from you, we know that many of the board members were fighting for us since day one, and I just wanted to say thank you to those of you who have been in this and fighting for us since day one. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments on the Sterigenics topic? Okay, seeing none, are there any further comments or questions from the board on the Sterigenics topic?
I'd like to call the question. There's a motion on the table.
Is there a second? What is the motion?
I'm not even sure, and I'm not really taking a motion. We're talking about Sterigenics. That would be, is that appropriate?
Motion to remove Zach as acting president and have trustee Franzese take over, presiding over these meetings until the election.
Right, I mean, if we are actually going to place something like that on the board's agenda, it would really need to be put on a publicized agenda for a formal introduction, discussion, and that motion, and that'd be made.
Well, then I'd like to put that on the next agenda.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else on Sterigenics? Okay, seeing nothing else, we'll move on to the next item here. Thank you. I didn't want to respond more forcefully. Again, I don't think it's the appropriate place for that. Thank you. Review and discussion of valet parking. Village Administrator Pollack, tell us what's up on the next one.
Yes, thank you. So at your last meeting, January 28th, the village board asked, under your consideration of business licenses in the village, as a side note, you asked for information about valet parking and restaurants in Burr Ridge, and you asked us to place this on your agenda for further review and discussion. No action be taken, but just more information about current conditions and options for providing valet parking, valet licenses in the village. To the best of our knowledge, there's only 5 restaurants in Burr Ridge that utilize valet parking. That would be Eddie Merlot's, Topaz, Hampton Social, Cooper's Hawk, and Capri. Eddie Merlot's is a self-contained parking lot, and we have no record of any issues or concerns in terms of impacts on public streets or any complaints about parking or the valet service at Eddie Merlot's. Same with Hampton Social. I'm not sure they do it all the time, but we have no records of any issues or complaints there. At Topaz and Cooper's Hawk, there have been sporadic complaints, mainly to do with the use of the adjacent entry drives, McClintock Drive, the adjacent McClintock Drive for Topaz, the adjacent Lincolnshire for Cooper's Hawk. There have been occasional complaints or issues with parking in the fire lane or in the drive lane at Cooper's Hawk. when those complaints come up, the police check it out, or if the police in their routine patrols see it, if they, much like the same we do at County Line Square, if the police see parking in the fire lane, if they see the person, the car's attendants, they tell them to move on. If they don't see the person and it's a car parked in the fire lane, they issue a ticket. And we will continue that program at both County Line Square and the Village Center. In regards to specifically to Capri Restaurant, as the board knows, there's been several actions taken by the board over the last few years regarding parking variations for the Capri Restaurant and other businesses in County Line Square. In 2015, the board approved a parking variation to allow the expansion of Capri Restaurant into an adjacent tenant space. That parking variation was approved subject to several conditions. One was that all employees park in the Pace lot after 5:30 p.m. each and every night. We know that many of the Capri employees park in the service drive behind the building. We have not considered that a violation, as that's not public parking anyway, so we believe it meets the spirit and the intent of the condition. And to our knowledge, the other employees are parking in the Pace lot. We have no evidence to indicate that this condition has been violated. Second condition was signs be posted stating that the parking lot is for County Line Square customers only. Those signs have been posted. Third condition was that each and every evening that the restaurant is open, valet parking shall be provided. And to staff's knowledge, that condition they have complied with that condition. That condition also included a statement that due in part to the statement in the condition was that overflow valet parking shall utilize the west end of the shopping center of the Pace parking lot. Based partly on the lack of a definition of what is overflow parking, there's no direct evidence that this condition has been violated. But even if it was, I think it would be difficult for us to determine what is overflow parking, what is meant by that condition, when does it become overflow valet parking. Fourth condition was that 4 spaces be designated in the parking lot for staging of valet parking. That has been done. And that finally that the operator shall diligently and forcefully enforce all the terms of this parking variation. And again, on all these conditions, staff has no evidence of violations of these conditions. There was a 2018 parking variation granted also, and with similar but revised conditions. That parking variation was to allow the business to expand or to add outdoor seating area. And after consulting with the village attorney, we determined that until they start using that outdoor seating area, those conditions cannot be applied or enforced. But as soon as they do, presumably in May or June of this year, then they will be subject to those new conditions, which include requirement that 2 valet attendants be provided from 6 to 9 p.m. on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday year-round, that all valet customer vehicles be parked in the Pace lot between 6 and 9 p.m. on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday evenings year-round, that all vehicles of Capri employees shall be parked in the Pace lot between 6 and 11 p.m. year-round, and if there's a violation of any condition of that 2018 ordinance, as determined by village staff, the Board of Trustees will consider revocation of the ordinance at a regularly scheduled meeting following the violation. Again, assuming they do use that parking variation by expanding the outdoor seating area, we will begin enforcing that. We also have drafted a letter to send to County Line Square and to Capri, letting them know in advance of the conditions, reminding them that those conditions will be applicable once they start using the outdoor dining area, the additional outdoor dining area. Other issues that have come up at County Line Square and have included, on a few occasions, staff has received complaints that the valet service has placed traffic cones in front of parking spaces in addition to the 4 staging area, spaces indicating that they are for valet parking only. We've let the Capri owner know that that's not permitted, and we will continue to monitor that. To our knowledge, it has not occurred recently. Other non-zoning parking issues at County Line Square have included parking in the fire lane. There have been a number of complaints regarding cars parked in the fire lane, which is the yellow curb that is in front of all the storefronts in County Line Square. As I said before, with the Village Center and County Line Square, our police department, if they see a car attendant or see someone getting in or out of the car, they will just tell them to move on. They can't park there. Our goal is compliance, not ticket writing. But if the car is unattended and there's no visible a person to talk to, they will get a ticket, and tickets have been issued for parking in the fire lane. At one time, we became aware of parking on Lincolnshire Drive, adjacent to Capri Restaurant. We got a call that there were cars parked there. That's a no parking zone. At that time, the police officer on duty, I believe, checked, went inside the restaurant, told them they can't park there, got the cars moved, and to my knowledge, that has not occurred since. Then finally, another issue that comes up and is parking in non-designated spaces in County Line Square. There've been, you go through there at night in the evenings and you see cars parked in the yellow diagonal striped area that's not a parking space, or they'll squeeze an extra one on the end of a parking row that starts to block the drive aisles. We have not had the ability to enforce that until now, and for 2 reasons. One is we didn't have an agreement with the property owner. We cannot enforce, other than the fire lane and handicap spaces, we cannot enforce parking on private property unless we have an agreement with the property owner giving us the right to do that. We did not have an agreement with the property owner. An older agreement had lapsed in 2017. The property owner initially didn't want to sign an agreement. We finally got them to sign an agreement, which was approved by the board in June 2018, which allows us to begin enforcement of parking violations on private property. However, we still couldn't enforce parking in non-designated spaces unless there was a proper warning sign. When the board was discussing the parking variation in September, October of 2018, the board directed us to ask the owner to put those signs up. The owner put signs up, they weren't the proper signs, had to take them down, and finally, as of last Thursday, the proper signs have been put up. Police department has checked them out, said they're good. As we began that enforcement, we gave them the weekend basically for warnings. Our police patrol officers were instructed to and we'd been doing that already before, but through the weekend we continued to do it, where we posted a note on an illegally parked car asking them or telling them that they can't park there. And also we've told all the businesses and the property owner that beginning today, Monday, February 11th, tickets will be issued instead of warnings. So now we can enforce that, and we will enforce that going forward. And finally, in regard to the questions regarding valet parking licensing, that is an option that the village could choose to do. There are other villages that do that in the Chicago area, and those were listed in the report that we gave you. Typically, what a valet license does is it establishes regulations. In other words, the person seeking the license would file a valet parking plan, if you will, designating their staging area and designated their parking area, and we would review that and make sure it's consistent with our policies that would be established through this process. and then we would issue the license. If there's a violation of the license, or board can determine, what the consequences are, but presumably after a certain number of violations, the license could be revoked, and the owner could either be, it could be suspended for a period of time. Whatever the board chooses, could be, 3 strikes, you're out, something like that. That would be up to the board to determine what those regulations would be for valet licensing. But the purpose of valet licensing is just to add another level of enforcement ability on the part of the village. I believe that covers it all. Evan has done a lot of work on this issue for me. I'm just sitting here reading it. Evan's been doing the legwork, and the chief and the police department have put in a lot of time researching this. If you have any questions, we're all here ready to respond.
Doug, you made a statement that since 2015, there was no, when they first got the ordinance for the parking, that there was no warnings or there's no trouble. I find that a little surprising, because when I brought it to your attention, you just said it a little while ago when I started with Mr. Walter, and Trustee Francis, and I brought it to your attention, and Evans, and we worked on it through. It took us to June to get an agreement signed, correct? Or the board to discuss. And you got the agreement signed from the property owner when?
June.
In June. It only took, on a slow boat from China, the signs to come. Okay, you put them in last week. Last February, we brought this issue up. There has been, and when Trustee Preveza last meeting asked the chief, were there issues? The chief got up and said, yes, there's been issues. So with what's going on from the prior ordinance given the restaurant owner with this valet, in my opinion, it's perfect timing for us as a board. And I'd like to make a motion to have staff put together a license program for the valet to protect the situation, so we have a little more control. If they're not going to give us a designated area and follow the rules, then we just pull their license. And the only one who doesn't benefit from it will be the actual restaurant owner. If they can't follow the rules, which they're going to do, just go there.
So is there a second to develop a valet license?
Second.
I'd like to speak on this issue.
Now we have a first and a second. You're free to speak on the motion that he made.
I'm not here to speak on the motion, I'm here to speak on the issue. So we're asking this licensing policy to take the place of the restaurant owner or the business owner to manage his valet service, correct? And I don't agree with that. It's incumbent upon the restaurant owner or the business owner to manage his service people, his contractors, his employees, and his valet service. So we've given this restaurant owner, and I don't want to pick on Capri because there have been other guilty ones as well, criteria for valet parking. And we went so far as with Capri is to establish certain criteria that you would normally, that would possibly be in this licensing program, one of which is a parking plan. We've told Capri what the parking plan is. Now, with the additional signage, with the warnings and such, and the stepped up assistance from the police department, we're able to do much better enforcement. However, I don't want to waste valuable police resources on parking violations at County Line Square. They've got much more important things to do in our village. So it would be incumbent on the restaurant owner to manage his valet service properly, and if he doesn't, then we take action. I don't think, in this case with licensing, we take the action. We are the enforcer, and I don't think we should be put in that position. Thank you.
Any other trustees? Yes, Trustee.
Trustee Francis, but if since 2015, the restaurant owner had to manage his own program, but it's not.
Hasn't worked.
So we're not doing any action. So if we can't get it one way, so right now it's going forward with the few signs that they put up now. Do you feel, in your opinion, that it will be better handled this way?
Well, I don't know if it's better, but it's a step in the right direction. And we haven't had the tools before at our disposal to enforce parking outside of the designated areas for staging. And many of the fire lane signs have been removed over the years. So I think that given the opportunity that have this valet company adhere to the plan that was agreed to by this board.
That I'm willing to pull my motion down, and I will table this for future situations, see if the actual restaurant owner can manage his own valet service, since we have both, now that we put this in action,
I
correct?
suspect he won't be able to, because it hasn't happened in the past.
Well, that's, okay, then we'll take proper actions from there.
Right. The other option you have, which you retained when you granted the 2018 variation, was that you could reconsider the grant of the zoning relief.
So
to
it's
the owner.
15, we're talking about 15 when they weren't following the rules since 15.
Right.
So rather than even get to 18, since they're not using the facility yet, go back to 15 and pull the situation from 2015.
I wanted to clarify something. There's two separate issues here, or two separate things. The conditions from the zoning variation conditions from 2015 have not been violated, to our knowledge. They may have been, and it didn't come to our attention, but we have no knowledge of any. That's what I meant. There have been these other complaints regarding parking in non-designated spaces, fire lane violations, et cetera. Those have occurred during that time period, but they're not violations of the zoning. They're violations of the municipal code or other regulations pertaining to parking and traffic. That's why I answered the way I did. Now, and also with the non-designated signs, our recollection is that was directed by the board back in September. And that's when we started. I still agree that it took too long to get them up. I completely agree with that. But just the time frame, I believe, was from September till now. There's no excuse. They should have been up a long time ago. They're up now, so we will be enforcing that. So I just wanted to clarify that part.
Thank you, thank you. I mean, I personally like the idea of the licensing program. Other villages do it, and it gives you some control. They enjoy the public benefit of our streets and use of our streets, but, you know, and I also think it gets out of the finger pointing, because right now you've got a restaurant owner saying it's the valet, and it's a restaurant owner. And, you know, you argued, Trustee Francis, vehemently. You had some great pictures and everything about the parking issue in the spot, and I've looked at the record. There's been a lot of accidents, things backing into things, and cars parked in the wrong spot. So I think from a safety standpoint and a personal property standpoint, we need to get some control over there, but I defer to whatever is the best way to do that. And of course, blocking a fire lane is a safety issue too. So yes, Trustee Mattal.
So I mean, who do we hold accountable for this? Do we hold the valet company accountable or Capri Restaurant accountable? And are there like 3 strikes and we take back the license, or what do we do? I mean, we need to have like a plan of action for that.
Well, you have two mechanisms, potential mechanisms here. You've got one in place, the zoning, which has specific criteria that specific conditions that were part of that zoning grant in 2018. They have to continue to abide by those conditions in order to continue to hold their special use and their variation. The additional regulation, potentially, would be a licensing scheme, which might be a little bit broader than the zoning, because it would relate to these violations if they're in fire lanes, if they're in other unauthorized areas that are beyond the scope of the actual zoning relief and conditions. So those are the two mechanisms you have. They could both be enforced, depending on what the nature of the violation is.
Yeah, Trustee Snyder.
So Doug, so here, to 2015, we're not enforcing anything when the employees park behind the restaurant because it's not bothering us. But it states in the 2015 to do this. So am I wrong that we're gonna put an ordinance together, we're not gonna follow the rules? Just asking you a question. Because you wanna go back and tell me that, no, there's no violation, which I know prior to 2018, I brought that up to you. So I'm willing to go whichever way you want. You can't have it both ways.
Right. No, fair enough.
Follow the rules is what we want.
Parking behind the building in the service drive is technically a violation.
Correct. Then it's a violation to get ticketed. Am I correct?
Well, it can't be ticketed, but it's a zoning violation.
Zoning violation, so you go back and give
You
the,
can issue a citation.
then
for
let's
a
issue a
zoning
citation if that happens. Bring the ordinance from 2015. I will draw my motion to bring the thing for the valet at the moment until we see how it goes.
Anita, Trustee Mattal? Yes. Yes, Trustee Francis.
So additional work from staff with creating a valet licensing policy, so to speak? What would that entail? What additional work would entail for staff? I mean, you're already overworked, you're already doing so much more with less.
Yes, I know. Glad we can all laugh together. Not to belabor the point, but truly a basic licensing program looks and basically says the village, it basically would be language in our municipal code that states the village board has the authority to create valet licensing programs to whatever capacity and scope you feel is appropriate. I've tried to include several examples of communities that had a permanent license, which means you apply once, it's approved by the board, and unless you want to change it, it's in effect forever. So let's just take Topaz for an example. The staging area could be that little cutout circular driveway. The parking area could be wherever they park cars right now. Maybe it's the village center deck, maybe it's along another street. But so long as that doesn't move, there would not be additional work being made by us to review it. It would be me and Chief reviewing this every 3 months. The other option that is popular is an annual license, just once a year it comes forward, much the way that another license, like a liquor license, may come forward. The most basic forms is usually we designate some area as valet staging. It's just a box on a map, and then valet parking, which is another box on the map. At any point within this box, it's legal to stage valet. At any point in the other box or boxes, it would be legal to park cars. And any violations observed thereof are violations of the ordinance and thus violations of the license. It's fairly straightforward. It would not take a great deal of time to set up. However, we obviously defer to your will and judgment on that.
Yes, Trustee Francis.
So if, say for example, the valet Capri were to submit a parking plan, they would utilize the number of spaces, the minimum number of spaces that they're required to have for that facility, correct?
Yes, those 4 spaces could be listed as part of, or the limited, or solely related to an area for staging. Again, that'd be up to your approval.
I'm talking about the number of spaces per number of tables. So if there
Yes.
So, okay, all right.
Certainly.
You know what, if you feel strongly about this, solving this problem, I'll support it. I'm just concerned that we're over-regulating, but if there's other problems if there's other problems at other facilities, I'm learning about Topaz and Cooper's Hawk having issues with valet. I wasn't aware of those since we made the cutout for Topaz. Then maybe we should go ahead and try this. So I'll support it.
You want to speak?
Yeah, I think,
Well, yes, Trustee Scott, yes.
Thank you.
It's okay.
well, I think holding,
Friend.
I mean, there's the restaurant owner, there's the valet company, there's the landowner, there's us. I mean, we're the ones that approved restaurants and to go in that facility in County Line Square. I have personally witnessed people parking in County Line Square and employees walking to the village center. But that's not supposed to happen. I've seen people park by Capri and go into Pace at 5:30 in the morning. So it's not just a valet company. I think if we license them and then we revoke the license and put another valet company in, they're going to face the same problems that the current valet company is facing. It's a challenging mall, and you got to be creative in finding a parking space. I find it. Sometimes it's on the other side if I need to go to wherever. It's the same thing at the village center. We have people want to park right in front of the store and walk in. And we just, unfortunately, we have busy retail center, 2 busy retail centers, and that's good for us.
Not about the people parking, the valet parking. Bring it back to that.
So I think licensing just adds to bureaucracy in the village. I think we hold them to these standards here and make sure they follow these conditions that were set. We gave them the variation, so they need to follow these conditions.
Yes, Trustee Snyder.
Well, since 2015, they haven't followed it, so, and even staff, even Doug got up there and stated, well, we haven't done it because. That's not following the rules. So I'll come back then, now with Trustees Francis' support, I'd like to make a motion for staff to do annual valet licensing. And then we'll watch out, now that we have the proper signs in the correct area, we'll see how the rest of it goes. So I'd like to make a motion to have the staff put together a motion for valet licensing
Annual.
annually.
Second.
Scott, I believe to clarify, the motion would be to bring it back to a future agenda for consideration.
Okay, any further discussion on it?
What is appropriate, when do the residents get a chance to come after?
Okay, let's roll call on the motion.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa?
What are we voting on? Getting license for
Annual
the,
license for valet service.
personally, I think the restaurants can have more effect on them, but if you want to try this, I'll go along with it.
Well, again, to clarify, the motion is just simply to consider it at a
Consider it,
future
okay.
board meeting for further
I'll
discussion.
say
Bring it
yes.
back for your review.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Scalpa?
No.
5-0, 5-1.
Motion carries. Okay, great. Now we're on C, consideration, under 8C, consideration of a recommendation to hire a replacement patrol officer to fill vacancy created by resignation of Juan Santiago. And if you could please bring us up to speed.
Sure. This was tabled at your last board meeting, so we brought it back, and I think the specific purpose was Trustee Snyder wanted to meet with the chief and myself, and we've done that, and if there's any further questions, chief is available to answer, and as well as myself.
Yes, Trustee Snyder.
I thought the chief did a fabulous job, spending about 2 hours going into specific detail, not only with regards to now, but also the discussion of part-time, full-time officers, et cetera. I was very impressed with his knowledge and some of the other information. So I would go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any further discussion from the board on hiring the replacement officer? Okay, any public comments on hiring the replacement officer? No. Okay, let's call the roll, please.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Matal?
Yes.
Trustee Scalpa?
Yes.
6-0.
Great. Now we're on 8D under considerations. This is the consideration of a recommendation to approve a lease agreement for the use of Village Hall parking lot for Shirley Ryan Ability Lab. And once again, Doug, the microphone is all yours.
Thank you. This will be a quick one, I think. The village staff was approached by the business at 7600 County Line Road, which is the Shirley Ryan Ability Labs, to use up to 10 parking spaces for their employees at the Village Hall parking lot. They indicated that this would be to alleviate not infrequent parking shortages that they experience at peak hours at their facility. They're having the typical problems of success, as we just talked about at County Line Square and Village Center, when oftentimes parking is lack of parking is the outcome of a successful business. And Shirley Ryan Ability Lab has indicated to us that they've been very successful, more so than they expected at this location in Burr Ridge. So this agreement would allow up to 10 employee-only parking here at the Village Hall on all but maybe three to 6 days a year. Our Village Hall parking lot behind the building is half full at the most. So 10 spaces most days would not impact our need for parking. I explained to Shirley Ryan Ability Lab that we can't guarantee. There may be 4 to 6 times a year where there's not enough parking, and in those days it's first come, first serve. And we even have the right to reserve employee parking spaces as a priority if we start having problems in that regard. The terms of the agreement would allow either party to cancel with 14 days notice, so this can be viewed as a test. If it's not working out for either party, all we have to do is give them 2 weeks notice and we can cancel the agreement. They have agreed to pay the village a rental fee of $350 per month. They also understand that although our Public Works Department does a great job of snow removal, and usually I don't think I've ever had a problem parking when I come to work in the morning, even in snowstorms, but we can't guarantee that that's going to be the #1 priority. If the timing of the snow is such that they're still out there removing it from the streets, then we're not guaranteeing that we're going to prioritize the Village Hall parking lot. So it's my recommendation that we approve the agreement, and staff will monitor that to see if it's working. If there's any problems, we'll bring that back, and we always have the option again of getting out of the agreement with 2 weeks' notice.
Thank you. Are there questions from the Board of Trustees about this? Yes, Trustee Francis.
So you're talking about the employees of Shirley Ryan Ability Lab parking at the north end of the Village Hall parking lot? Or is it first come, first served?
First come, first serve. If we see that we need to designate spaces, we can do that, but initially it'll just be undesignated.
Is there a walkway connection between the two lots?
Yes, there is.
And who maintains that in the wintertime when it snows?
The village does.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions from the trustees?
I make a motion, we approve the lease.
Second.
Okay, you have first and second. I was going to give the public an opportunity. Any comments from the public on this issue at all? Yes.
From an insurance perspective,
Yes.
increased liability to the village.
Well, the agreement provides for reasonable liability and indemnification provisions by the company
So they'll provide insurance.
for certain actions, yes.
Okay, yes, trustee.
They would just basically add us, the village, as an additional insured or a named insured on their policy for the specifics.
Plus the indemnification clause, so wonderful. Okay, were there any other questions, comments from the board? Okay, great. Then I'd like to call the roll, please, Clerk.
Trustee Pavesa?
Yes.
Trustee Vital?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Skiappa?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
6-0.
Great. We've made it all the way down to K here. Other considerations for announcement, deliberation, discussion only. No official action will be taken. Any comments from the board at all or other village officials? Okay, I don't see any. I'd just like to make one clarification. You know, Trustee Francis, you was troubled by that comment you made. I did not say that what, as you quoted me. As I recall, we were having a discussion about the cancer risks in the area, and I did mention that my knowledge is that if one drink or more a day increases a woman's risk of breast cancer substantially, and I believe that was my comment to you. I did not say anything about women drinking too much or anything like that. So I just want to make that clear to everybody that we were having a discussion about cancer risks. So thank you. It was a discussion about cancer risks. So it's unfortunate that you took it out of context like that.
I don't believe I did.
Well, are there any other comments from residents? Yes, ma'am. Please, if you'll say your name and the town you live in.
My name is Colleen Wilcox. I live in Burr Ridge. I've lived here for 20 years. I had no intention of speaking to you tonight. First, I want to thank everyone because I know you give so much time and energy and your time and your talents, and it's a big responsibility to represent the people of Burr Ridge. If the acting mayor has publicized his position and overstepped his authority, I urge you to take action. The people of Burr Ridge deserve better than that. I ask the board, since promises were already made and promises were already broken, do you really think that between now and another month, we can feel safe that this won't happen again? And I ask the village attorney, is there ever any provision to do a special meeting for anything? Did an action be made before the next meeting?
Is that the end of your comments, ma'am?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Another resident with comments or another? If you please state your name and your town, please.
Yvonne Mayor Burr Ridge. I also wasn't planning to speak tonight, but I'm really shocked. I think, Mr. Model, with all due respect, you need to step down. What you just said, clarifying what Mr. Francisi indicated, you made some comment about the people in Willowbrook, the women in Willowbrook are getting cancer because they drink too much. Your clarification shows that you just really don't understand how severe the issue with Sterigenics is. For you to even begin a discussion claiming women who suffer from breast cancer, who have to have mastectomies, who have to go through radiation, who have to go through chemotherapy, who have to lose their lives, might have increased their likelihood of developing breast cancer if they drink one drink a day. That's ignorance that is just not, it's shocking to me. And so I think just, if you're actually going around saying things like that, you can't be the face of this village. You cannot serve as the village mayor. Now let's move on to what was pointed out about your press release. I did find tonight a Facebook page that you have, and on it there is a news press release issued on February 8th, where you state, as acting village president, we are seeking an emergency injunction to shut down the Sterigenics plant. And it's a long press release that basically sings your praises for everything that you've done, including how yesterday, as acting village president, I authorized the village staff and attorney to work with the village of Willowbrook and city of Darien on this effort. We are seeking an emergency injunction. Now, I believe that is what Mr. Francisi says was you overstepping your bounds, since after all, apparently the trustees are the ones who have to actually make that decision to go forward and sign a letter that was signed, that's being signed tonight, where you're seeking, along with the other villages, for the state's attorney and the attorney general to seek emergency relief. So I agree with Mr. Francisi. I think you went too far. But let's talk about how you've politicized your position. Your website.
5 minutes, ma'am.
Well, I'm requesting another moment.
Thank you.
Your website also goes on to talk about how you led the charge to make the D86 referendum fail, and that you're continuing to work for that effort. And all of this is on your vote for me as village president. I believe community members, including myself, stepped up at past meetings to point out how inappropriate it is for any official to go before D86 and, basically tell them what they should do, how they should run their business, the referendums that should be passed, and certainly the fact that you're campaigning as Mayor Mickey did with your names.
Please wrap it up.
I will wrap it up, sir. I will wrap it up. I don't need 5 minutes, Ms. Muller, thank you. My point is, you continue to make D86 the business of another municipality your business. You continue to talk about how the village of Burr Ridge, all the residents, successfully brought down the referendum. Well, I'm a resident of Burr Ridge. I voted yes on the referendum. I'm voting yes on the next referendum. And I think many people sitting here tonight are also voting yes. So please don't continue to make these statements where you speak on behalf of the entire village, because you don't. And hopefully you will not be elected to be the mayor, because you haven't earned the right to be the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more residents' comments? Yes, ma'am. Your name and your town, please, when you approach the microphone.
My name is Ann Muller. I live at 6101 Wood Creek Drive in Burr Ridge. And like many other people this evening, I had no intention of speaking until I heard much of the conversation of the trustees this evening. I'm a former board member of District 181, two-term president for 2.5 years. I, as a Burr Ridge resident, after hearing what Mrs. Mayor just indicated, that Mr. Model has on his website, I'm appalled that as a village trustee, he felt it was correct to even actively oppose a referendum of a different governing body. I read many of his statements. I could not believe. And you as fellow trustees, I think, have a responsibility to the village. And I thank you as well that Colleen Wilcox did, because I know the kind of time that you put in to your positions. and the dedication that you give to this village. But I hope that you move forward with removing Mr. Model from the interim mayor position, because I agree with Mrs. Mayor. We deserve better.
Thank you. Are there any other residents? Okay, no more residents. Reports or communications from the village officials? I would just like to say that, I've never advocated about a referendum, and I'm not going to now, but I would like to mention that I am also a citizen, and I have my rights, just as you do, to speak of my free mind outside of this office. I am running for mayor, and maybe some of my positions might offend you, but the majority of Burr Ridge agreed with me. So I think I'm in good standing, and I was asked, I didn't pick this issue because I love it or anything. I picked this issue because residents were coming to me and saying, please, please, please help us. Please do something. So I tried to do my best, and I think that the election will speak for itself. I hope we can leave it at that. Anyway, are there any comments from non-residents in the board? Non-resident? Yes, please approach the microphone. Your name and your town, please, sir.
Thank you. My name is Dale Pollock from Hinsdale, and I appreciate the opportunity to address the village board this evening. Mr. Model, my concern is for your very public response to the referendum. Whether it's appropriate for you to advocate against the referendum as either a private individual or otherwise, it comes off, the appearance is clearly that you're doing it on behalf of the village. There's lots of discussion around the surrounding communities about why is Burr Ridge doing that? Well, perhaps Burr Ridge officially isn't doing that, but it should be understood that it does have the appearance that Burr Ridge is doing that. And for good or bad, as a result, the village owns it. But whether it's appropriate or not, I really have to ask you, how do you think about that? Because I think it's well understood by everybody that people move to this community and surrounding communities for many reasons, but perhaps none more common than the quality of our schools. And I understand that you have grievance, and perhaps some legitimate grievances. But what we need at this time is unity among these communities. There's a lot of dysfunction sewn into District 86, not the least of which is the fact that there are many feeder schools, all feeding into 2 high schools that have different curriculum, that have different socioeconomic challenges and dynamics, and yet they all come together in 2 high schools. And it makes it very difficult for D86 to reconcile those differences and do it in a way where nobody feels aggrieved and everyone feels that it's fair. It's a very challenged environment. And as such, because we have a unified interest as surrounding communities to do the best we can for these schools, it's really counterproductive for anybody to take the vehement positions as you have so publicly. Yes, you are an individual, and yes, you're entitled to your opinion, and you should advocate your opinion, but I would encourage you to do it in a constructive way. Do it at the board meetings and public comment. Meet with the board members individually. Participate on the committees. I think it's counterproductive to the citizens of this community and those around us to take down the schools. And it's clear that if this referendum fails, as you seem to wish it will, that our schools will suffer, our children will suffer, their education will suffer, and the property values of your residents and those of surrounding communities will suffer greatly at your behest. You're leading that cause. You own it. You will own it. And unfortunately, whether it's intended or not, the village of Burr Ridge owns it. Why do that? What possibly could motivate you to take these schools down as you are doing? We need to be unified. We need the voice of reason. We need the voice of reconciliation to do the best we can for our students
Please
and
wrap
our
up your
residents'
comments.
property values.
Thank you.
Please, Mr. Model, please take a reasoned approach and let's stop the scorched earth
Your
approach
comment period
that
is
you're
done. Thank
taking
you, sir. Thank
to
you.
this referendum.
Thank you very much. Now, I'll I'll remind everyone, the voters will decide this. You don't have to argue with me. The voters will decide this. The voters spoke several times, and they will speak again. I appreciate it. I think the will of the voters has been clear, and I think it'll be clear again in April. Anyway, can I please have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it.